my name is Logan Rayner. I'm 38 years old, and I've served in the United States Marine Corps for nearly 2 decades. When people hear that, they picture strength, order, a man who's seen it all. But nothing in the battlefield prepared me for what I came home to. I had just wrapped up an 8-month deployment in Afghanistan. Dust still clung to my boots, and I could still feel the vibration of helicopters in my chest. I walked through my front door in North Carolina expecting the sound of little feet rushing down the hallway, my wife's voice calling out from the kitchen. Instead, the house was silent, empty. The furniture was still there, our family photos still hung on the wall. But their shoes were gone from the rack, and so were their coats. I stood frozen at the foot of the stairs, scanning for some explanation. On the dining table, there was a single sheet of paper. It wasn't even folded. 5 words written in my wife's handwriting. She said, "Don't look for us. I'm sorry." For a few seconds, I forgot how to breathe. My knees buckled, but I didn't fall. I just stood there, stuck between anger and disbelief. I tried calling her, over and over, straight to voicemail. My kids' rooms were clean but stripped. It was like they'd disappeared overnight, like someone had erased my family in one brutal sweep. People think soldiers fear death the most. But it's not death. It's coming home to nothing. It's knowing that everything you fought to protect slipped away while you weren't looking. And the worst part? I had no idea why. At first, I thought my wife had lost her mind. I went through every scenario in my head, every argument we'd ever had, every moment I might have missed a sign. But the truth was, there were no signs. One day, we were a family, and the next, I was a man standing alone in a house full of silence. I started digging. I checked her emails, bank statements, and anything that could give me a lead. I even pulled footage from the neighbor's doorbell camera. That's when I saw it. A man she hugged goodbye the night before she vanished. He wasn't American. He had a thick accent, French maybe, and something about the way he looked at her made my stomach turn. His name was Marcel. I found that out through a contact at the embassy. He wasn't just a friend. He had a history of manipulation, blackmail, and even ties to financial fraud. But what chilled me wasn't his past. It was what I found buried in my wife's deleted messages. One of them hadn't fully cleared from the cloud. It was from Marcel. He said, "If you don't leave him and take the children, I'll send the video to every contact in your phone. Then to the media. Then the Marines." He even attached a still image from a video I had never seen. Her face. Her panic. It was years ago. Some kind of party she never talked about. She looked scared, cornered, like someone trapped. My hands were shaking. I felt betrayed, angry, and ashamed. Not at her. At myself. Because I didn't see it. I didn't know what she'd been carrying all this time. And I had no idea this man had been in her life long enough to use her past against her. For a moment, I wanted to believe she could have come to me, that we could have figured it out together. But then I imagined her reading that message. I imagined her thinking about me, our boys, our life here, and still deciding to run. That's not something you do unless you believe there's no way out. I sat in the dark that night, just me and that damn message playing over and over in my head. I couldn't protect her. Not from him, not from the past, not even from herself. And what haunted me most was realizing that maybe she didn't leave me. Maybe she left to protect me. I talked to a friend from Intel. He helped me trace Marcel's digital footprint. Everything pointed to Lyon, France. She had booked one-way tickets using a third-party site and forged her departure date to avoid red flags. It wasn't just an escape, it was a cover-up. But still, I didn't know why she hadn't told me anything. Why hadn't she trusted me with the truth? Then it hit me. Maybe she thought I'd try to be the hero, that I'd confront Marcel and get myself killed. And maybe, just maybe, this was her way of keeping me alive. It's strange how your heart can break for someone you're angry at. I was furious with her. But I missed her. I missed the way she laughed when she was nervous, the way she brushed the kids' hair behind their ears, the way she used to fall asleep mid-movie with her hand on my chest. And now, Every one of those memories felt like a goodbye I didn't know I was living. The next morning, I looked at myself in the mirror, not as a Marine, not as a husband, just as a man trying to hold on to what was left. And I made a decision. I wasn't going to let fear keep my family apart. If there was even a chance she was still in danger, I was going to find her. Not to fix everything, not even to get her back, just to tell her one thing. She didn't have to run alone. I was raised by a woman who was always looking over her shoulder. My mom never said much about our past, but she carried it like a weight strapped to her chest. We moved every couple of years, sometimes more often than that, and it never felt like starting over. It felt like hiding. She'd tell me it was for work, or to be closer to better schools, or because the neighborhood was changing. But none of that ever added up. We never stayed long enough to make friends. I knew how to pack a box by the time I was 6. And every time a car slowed down near our driveway, she'd peek through the blinds like we were fugitives. I asked about my father once. I was 9. She was folding laundry and stopped mid-shirt. She didn't get angry. She just went quiet and said, "He's not part of our story." After that, I didn't ask again. Still, little things stuck with me. She hated cameras, never wanted her picture taken. She flinched at certain last names, like Kingsley or Hawthorne, and she'd change the subject if she heard them on TV. When I brought home a book about famous American families for a school project, she made me return it the same night. At the time, I thought she was just overprotective, maybe a little paranoid, but now, looking back, it was something else. It was fear. Not fear of what might happen, but fear of being found. She worked 2 jobs most of my life. Saved everything. Paid in cash when she could. Our house was always modest, but spotless. She kept the curtains closed even on sunny days. And whenever I asked why we didn't have family photos, she said memories were enough. I used to think she was lonely. Now I think she was running. From what, I didn't know. But it always felt like our lives were built on sand, like one strong wind could blow it all away. I just never imagined the storm would come after she was gone. It happened by accident. I was fixing a creak in the floor of my mother's old bedroom, a sound she used to blame on the house settling. I pried up one of the planks near the window, expecting to find loose nails or warped wood. Instead, there was metal. Cold, rusted, wedged between the joists like it had been there longer than I'd been alive. It was a small steel box, locked but brittle with time. The latch snapped open with a screwdriver. Inside was everything I wasn't supposed to know. There were photos, folded documents, and a single envelope with handwriting that didn't belong to my mother. The first thing I saw was her face. Not as I knew her, but younger, glowing, dressed in silk and pearls, standing beside a man in a suit that screamed old money. I flipped the photo over. Paris, 1985. Her smile was soft, like she was safe, like she was loved. And then came the birth certificate. My name, my real name, Logan Harrison Kingsley. I couldn't breathe. My fingers went numb. I read it again. It didn't make sense. All these years, I thought my father was just a ghost in her silence. Now he had a name. A powerful name. The name she wouldn't let me say out loud when I was a kid. At the bottom of the box was the letter. It was aged, written in a fountain pen, the kind no one uses anymore. The words were neat, but heavy. He wrote about how much he loved her, how proud he was the day I was born, and how sorry he was for what his family had done. His name was signed in ink that had started to fade. Harrison Kingsley. The letter said he had tried to find her, that he never stopped looking, that he hoped one day she'd forgive him and tell me the truth. I sat on the floor with that box in my lap for over an hour. I didn't move. I couldn't. Everything I believed about my life cracked open in that moment. My mother wasn't just a cautious woman who moved a lot. She had been running from something, or someone. And now, finally, I had a name to chase. A man I had never met. A man who might have been searching for me all along. The building was colder than I expected. Modern, tall, the kind of place that smelled like money and old leather. I stood in the lobby with my hands clenched, watching the elevator numbers blink slowly down. I wasn't ready, but I'd come this far. His office was on the 22nd floor. A secretary with red glasses asked if I had an appointment. I said no. I just needed 5 minutes. When she asked my name, I told her, Logan Kingsley. She paused, then stood up and disappeared behind a thick mahogany door. He looked different from the photos. Older, yes. Tired eyes, but still sharp, still regal. He stood when I walked in, confused. Then he asked what this was about. I told him I thought he might be my father. He didn't take it well. He scoffed. Said his son had died years ago, that this wasn't funny. People had tried things like this before. He pointed at the door, asked me to leave. His voice was calm, but there was steel underneath. It felt like rejection wrapped in a suit. I didn't move. I just reached into my coat and pulled out the letter. The one he wrote my mother. I placed it on his desk. For a second, he didn't touch it, just stared like it was a ghost come back to haunt him. When he finally picked it up, his hands shook. He read silently, then looked up at me, his jaw clenched tight. His eyes searched my face, like he was trying to find a piece of himself in a stranger. I told him I found it in a box under my mother's floorboards. That I wasn't there for money or attention, I just wanted the truth. He asked my mother's name. I said it. His whole face changed. Like hearing her name cracked something open inside him. Still, he hesitated. Still, he said it couldn't be. The timing didn't match. That this couldn't be real. I took a step closer, rolled up my sleeve, showed him the birthmark on my left forearm. The one shaped like a comma. He stared at it like it had burned him. Said his son had the same mark, same spot, same shape. I told him what my mom used to say. It looked like God paused when he made me. He sat down, hard, like the weight of everything just dropped onto his chest. Neither of us spoke for a while. Then he whispered my name. Not just Logan. The full thing, Logan Harrison Kingsley. He said it like a prayer, like a name he hadn't dared to speak in decades. And I knew in that moment, he believed me. He didn't cry, but his eyes filled up and he looked away. Said he had always wondered, always hoped, that he'd searched, but her trail went cold too fast. He thought she didn't want to be found, thought maybe she had moved on. He blamed himself. I told him she never stopped loving him, that she kept everything hidden, that maybe she was trying to protect me from something bigger than either of us understood. He nodded, said he wished he'd tried harder, said he'd wasted a lifetime thinking the door was closed. He reached for my hand, gripped it with both of his, and for the first time in my life, I felt what it was like to be held by a father. Everything inside me cracked open. Years of silence, questions, holes I didn't know I had. In one moment, they flooded in, and it didn't fix everything, but it gave me something I never thought I'd get. A beginning. Harrison offered to fund everything. Private security, lawyers, travel, but I said no. This wasn't his fight. I needed to do it myself. As a Marine, as a man who still had something to protect, I flew to Lyon on my own dime, using what I had saved and a little help from an old brother in arms. We coordinated with local authorities, tracked Marcel through his phone records and surveillance footage. It didn't take long. He wasn't careful. He thought she was alone. We caught him just before dawn, outside an apartment on the edge of town. My wife looked exhausted, but not broken. The kids were safe. When she saw me, her face collapsed. Not in fear, in relief. We didn't speak right away, just held the moment still. Later, after everything had settled, we sat on a bench near the river. The kids were playing a few feet away. I told her I didn't come to blame her, I came to bring them home. She nodded, said she never stopped loving them. I said, I know. We didn't make promises. We didn't try to glue something back together that was already cracked. But we agreed on one thing. Our boys deserved peace, and we were strong enough to give it to them. Even if that meant standing beside each other, not as husband and wife, but as parents, as survivors, as a team. 3 months after we found each other, Harrison passed away in his sleep. It was quiet, peaceful, the kind of ending a man like him deserved. He left everything to my sons. Not to me, but to them. A trust fund for education, a foundation in their name, and a letter that said he hoped they would grow into men who stood for something more than legacy. I didn't touch a cent for myself. Instead, I moved back to North Carolina, bought a modest house near the coast, and started volunteering full-time. I worked with veterans dealing with trauma and with women trying to escape men like Marcel. I didn't need money, I needed meaning. And for the first time in my life, I knew what that felt like. The Kingsley name meant power, but I decided to let my sons define what that power would become. Not through status or wealth, but through purpose. Through how they treated people, through how they faced the world. I couldn't undo the past, but I could build something better from it. And maybe that's the legacy that matters most. I used to think family was something I had lost. Once it slipped through your hands, there was no getting it back. But I was wrong. Family isn't just blood or a house with laughter. It's the people you fight for, the ones you choose to stand beside even after everything falls apart. I didn't get the ending I expected, but maybe that's what made it real. I stopped running from the past, and I faced it. And in doing that, I found something I didn't know I was missing. Not just my children, not just the truth. I found myself. Let me ask you something. What part of your past are you still running from? And what might happen if, just once, you turned around and faced it?